chaps, I thought I'd start this video off with, I'm in the process of attempting to make a mould. So the back left driver's side of that coupe, or landau, is so epically screwed that I am going to try and make a mould of the back of a coupe. So what I've done is, wow, that's exceptionally hot. So I've got myself a 10mm piece of steel, nice and thick. I've got myself a piece of manila folder. I've gone off to the back of that coupe over there, because that shape is the same on a coupe and a landau. So I've gone off to this one. Now this is an exceptionally original car. Like, this coupe is, probably 10 years ago, these are what people were restoring, and now people are restoring that crap. So this is an exceptionally good car, very original. Nothing has ever really rusted on it except a couple of key things. So like, the whole back of this car is all original. It's never been fraying, it's never rusted out. I mean, a little ding in there and here and there, but I'm copying this coupe section. So a little baby dent in there, but that's not a big showstopper. But all the key areas are all original. There was no bog in it. Literally paint stripper and paint. It's all nice and original. I've taken a template of this shape, which I know is correct. It matches this side. So I've copied that. I've mirrored it, because obviously we're trying to do the right side, not the left side. And we go over here. So I did that, copied it. There's the shape there, flipped, because obviously one side, the other side. You got to remember that this needs to be actually smaller than the actual section that you're going to end up with, because the steel is 1mm, so you'll have 1mm here, 1mm here, so it's actually got to be 2mm narrower, because the steel's got to fold around the edges. So what I'm going to do, or attempt to do, is, so I put that on a piece of steel, sprayed copper spray over it so I can see it, cut it out with the oxy, because it's pretty thick steel, and I'm over here grinding it, and I'm going to obviously whittle this down. So I've got it roughed out with the oxy, and then I'm going to whittle it down to its final shape, and then I'm going to heat it up and put the curve in it, the one that goes that way, because I've got a coupe to copy off of, so I can match the curve. And then I'm going to weld a stick to it, or a piece of bar, so it can mount in a vise. And then I'm going to put a piece of steel over the top of it, clamp with vice grips, and gently heat it up and tap it around. So this is effectively a mould, and that should give me a new rear section of the coupe that I can then come along and chop this garbage completely out and put a whole new end on the quarter panel, because none of it's there, it's all gone. And also this is so when you put that template on here, this curves out a hell of a lot more than this garbage does. And then what's a little bit concerning is when you put the template over here, this area is too narrow on this car. So it's a little bit, you can almost see it actually when I stand here, because you look at here, and that isn't vertical, which it should be. So this actually tapers down here, which is very interesting. Luckily I have an original coupe boot lid that I can potentially test fit into this hole, but the problem is, if the guys have actually been screwing with this with a boot lid that's not quite right and made it fit the car, well, then you're going to run into some issues. But all I can do is return it to what it should be, copying off original stuff. That way I'm covered. And then they can obviously rework it again, hopefully not screwing up what I fixed. So this was obviously too narrow by nearly a centimetre, which makes sense. So when it actually finishes, it's going to be out the right width, which, if you look there, this goes whoop, almost takes a dive off the end. So that's all wrong. So effectively I'm going to cut all of that garbage out, hopefully, and put a whole new end on that quarter panel, and get rid of what looks to be a huge dent through it. So fingers crossed. It's only because I've got that coupe in here that I can actually copy off of And I did mould that off another coupe when I had... Now the kick panels are down! Well, at least if they're on the ground, they're not going to fall any further next minute through the concrete. How is that even possible? So yeah, I can copy this curve. This one's all beautiful. I've already bodyworked this one, so that's why I actually copied off a side that hadn't been bodyworked. All I've done to this is just make all this groove really pretty. So yeah, we're going to copy the good car, the really nice original one, to make a template to then make more. And I don't actually know if this is going to be successful, but I'm hoping. So you'll never know if you don't try, so I'm going to give it a whirl. Alrighty, so I believe we're almost ready for a test. It's astronomically hot, surprise, surprise. And put on the glove. I've had that up against the other coupe. That's pretty close to the right profile. So what I'll do is I'll weld some sort of doodad hoo-ha onto the back side of this and focus on the camera, and hopefully I can have it sitting in a vise like this, or like that probably, and I can get my other sheet, I can clamp it on, I can just heat it up, tap it around, and hopefully it won't do anything stupid. But that's pretty much spot on. I can feel my wrist giving out. So it needed to be actually a little bit smaller than this template, because this was the outer template. So this actually has to be just ever so slightly smaller than the back side of the coupe, because it's effectively the inside, we're making the outside. But I mean, I can't profess that it probably won't be perfect, but it might be something that's should I say, something that the piece that comes off this hopefully will be usable, and you know, you could rework the back of the car a little bit, whether or not compared to what's currently back there. I really am hopeful that's going to work. It is a bit of a gamble right now, but it looks about right, if anybody knows coupes. Alrighty, and I think I'm ready to give this a test wheel. That's got a curve, that's got a curve, it's the right shape. I think it is, it's pretty close. And I've smoothed it out as much as I could. I had my metal file running over it just to try and whittle out all the edges, because ideally you want this to be as close to the original shape as possible. Now, I'm no magician, and I'm winging it, but I think if I can put the piece of steel over and clamp it on in a couple of places, and then just tap it down and around this, because this is obviously going to be a lot stronger than the tin steel, it should take the shape. If I had some way to put that in a little press where I don't know, I was just thinking to myself out loud. But yes, I'm going to give this a crack, and and I'll obviously have it'll be a little bit manky, and then I can trim it off. So I probably want to have it with nearly an inch around these edges, and when I come to doing this bit, I'll drop it down as far as I can, and then obviously I've got to fold it back up, because there's that inner lip that the tail light panels weld onto. So I think this is going to work quite well. It's not going to be perfect, I'll just say that right now, but I'm going to give it a red hot go. Alrighty, I think that's worked fairly well. If I had to take note, I probably should have used a slightly bigger piece of steel, or maybe turned it slightly because it's a bit narrow down here. Narrow down here, and it's a bit much up here, but for a test, that was pretty good. Looks worse than it is, but it'll, hopefully this will just, maybe it's a tight fit. Come on. Come on now. I see what I did. I hammered it a bit too far over. Anyway, I'll get that off and I'll hammer it up a bit more, but well, that's one way to make a piece over and over again. Doesn't actually take that long, really. I'm thinking ye olde rare spares must have done something very similar when they were making their panels. And obviously their moulds are getting very, very old and tired. But yeah, that's coming along quite nicely. I'll catch you up in a second once I've got this off and straightened up a bit and a bit cleaned up. Alrighty, so I'm unsure whether or not I'm going to use this piece or make another one, because I actually managed to accidentally, because the way I've got this is you've got a vice grip, a piece of steel that's cut sort of to the right shape. It's got to have a bit extra hanging off, and I didn't quite get it 100% because, you know, I was just winging this and having a bit of a test. And, you know, for a test, I don't think it actually turned out too shabby. His dad goes, "Oh, you're following suit from that company that shall not be named, putting the thing in the die wrong." I didn't put it wrong, I just put it slightly crooked. Yes, I'm following suit. Nah, I don't want to get into a habit of making tons of these. But considering that is now probably technically a usable piece, I'll probably sandblast the inside and clean it up. I also found that when I took it off the die, obviously it had like waves along here. As I hammered those flat, it actually managed to flatten itself out. So then I was able to trim it, and then I stick it back in the shrinker and curve it back down the way it was. And through here as well, because they're supposed to be a bit curved. So, might be a bit too much, but you know, it's not a bad way to make the whole section. I just wish I had just got it slightly better. Oh, if it was that company that we shouldn't talk about, they'd probably be stoked and they'd just sell that as is. But to me, ideally I'd love it to have probably that much down here, if that makes any sense. So effectively I had too much hanging off here, not enough here. But the joys of doing that for the first time, I've actually never made a mould like that to make something. It was quite interesting. And the heat, it got that a little bit, but considering that when I was making this, it required an absolute horrendous amount of heat to even bend it a smidgen, I figured, it probably won't even notice having this sitting over the top of it. And it didn't really, because you can see there's almost no heat through here. A little bit through here, because it's obviously, it might have had a bit more going, but it actually worked really well in doing that, which I know is a bit of a pain in the ass to make on a good day when you have to do that section. And realistically, that's effectively good enough for a coupe or a landau. They're all the same, because that's basically the back end of the quarter panel. I mean, obviously you got to trim it up a little bit, and it needs to have a bit whittled out of here, so basically just even up that flange. But gee, that worked well. That actually worked better than I expected it to. And I'm not throwing this out because, sure, I bet my bottom dollar that's not the last time I work on a coupe and doing that section, because they nearly always rust out through there. Hell, I mean, if you're going to do a coupe and you needed to replace the flange that the taillight panel sits on, you could just make a piece and not do the whole thing and just hammer out that flange there and then trim it off and weld that into a car. You wouldn't even have to make the whole thing, but you could use it to make that. I really do impress myself sometimes. Stunned. Never hurts to give it a go. You might be surprised. I'm going to leave this video here, I reckon. I've got to get back onto the... I'm going to do some stuff on that landau. It's not overly exciting, it's just removing crap. So I'll catch up on a video tomorrow. And this will do for this video. And I thought you might like this one. Something a bit different, a bit creative, and a bit useful.